So it's when we get together, memories are made. With kids, it can be very exciting if there's Santa or for the evenings of Hanukkah, and so when we start to lose some of our loved ones or they transition truly to the other side, it becomes difficult because they're so a part of those gatherings, and then all of a sudden they're not there, at least not physically. And so do they join us for the holidays? Absolutely. And how do we honor them in that process? Ooh, just eat one of their favorite items for them, even if you have to sneak an extra cookie. Maybe toast them if they had a favorite beverage, tea, dessert, treat. Have that for them. When you're gathering around, just talk about them a little bit. Share a memory, because usually they're sitting right there anyway. At dinner time, like also, even if your mind, if not everybody believes in people transitioning to the other side or the fact that they can join us, because a lot of people do believe that we go to heaven and we cannot contact them anymore. And so even if you have people around you that don't believe, in your mind, you can say, I'm thinking about you now. I bet you're with us. And you know what? They will hear that, and that will go very far with them and for you, because it helps you to know and establish that connection. Okay, so I've had a very interesting couple of weeks of readings, because like I said, we are in the holiday season. And so I wrote down 3 examples from readings just in the last 2 weeks where someone from the other side gave factual evidence that without a doubt they were with their family members. And I have to say, I've had a lot of joy with readings this past week in particular, because the people on the other side have been very funny. So when they're funny, we have a lot of laughter, obviously, in the readings, because our personalities don't change. So one incident happened, I think in that reading, it was just yesterday. And it was I was reading for a woman, and honestly, I can't remember if it was her mother or her grandmother that connected with us. And she said that you decorated your tree, you placed an old ornament of mine on there, and it doesn't match the decor. And so the woman said to me, I did decorate the tree. I was holding the ornament and I thought it doesn't match the decor. And then I believe it was her grandmother. And then I thought of my grandmother and I decided to put it up anyway. Now, how amazing is that? Because how could I know that? How could she know that her grandmother is watching? And so when we call that a piece of factual evidence, because we have, she was able to validate factually that she went through that process. And I could only get that information from her grandmother, who said she put it on the tree even though it doesn't match her decor. So, that showing their presence, that connection in every day, is often what we want to hear. Those to me are the greatest pieces of comfort. Couple of weeks ago, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, this one was a little bit different. This was a daughter of someone on the other side. And she said that her parents still had everything in boxes. So she was showing me everything in boxes, and she was tying it to the holidays. And she said that her parents had everything in boxes and they weren't planning to decorate this year. And that was because their daughter has passed within the last year. And that's a tough thing to hear. And for her, she says, but I love Christmas and I want them to not be sad for me. And so in her own way, she was trying to encourage her family to still celebrate Christmas. Now, this is a tough one because it's present. It's new and we're going to miss them. And we don't always have the energy when we're dealing with grief to do a whole elaborate thing for Christmas. And so what I told the mom and dad here was, you can make a little compromise. You can put just a few things out, and this would help honor your daughter and also not close off the holidays completely. We can always create a balance between the two. you know. And I will also say, you know, for them on the other side, it is so much easier for them. So, you know, me being a medium, I'm the in-between person. It may sound very easy what I'm saying. Just put a few decorations out because that's what they want. But at the same time, let's also recognize where we are here in the physical and in grief, and we have to honor and respect that. So if you have it in you to put a few things out, do so. If you don't, you can just say to them, I know you really enjoyed the holidays. I'm just a little bit tired and I'm taking care of myself, but I'm still thinking about you. Okay. Now, the third reading that I want to do, and this is a great example, this reading is really a great example of how mediumship works. And so as I break down the reading, and then I'll put together how it came out. This was just after Thanksgiving, so again a few weeks ago, and I was connecting a grandmother to a lot of grandmothers I think recently, but I was connecting a grandmother to her granddaughter here, and this is what I got. I heard did not follow tradition, so that's where the hearing clairaudience comes in. That's what I heard. I saw the word my, and then I saw recipe card. And then I just felt that, you know, I just knew it was for Thanksgiving. And so that knowing is considered claircognizance. So what I then said to the granddaughter is, your grandmother is telling me that you all changed tradition and you did not follow my recipe this year. And the granddaughter burst out laughing and said, that's right. We made the base and then my mother updated the recipe. So, you know, this is how it works in bits and pieces. And then we put together the whole story in that way. And I love this story because, again, it shows the presence of the grandmother there and knowing that you didn't follow my recipe exactly. And so therefore you changed up tradition a little bit. I mean, to me, these are just, these are the pieces we want to hear because we want to know that they're with us. And so I wanted to share just that breakdown of how that works with you. So, you know, to wrap up a little bit, because I really love to answer as many questions as possible. They do join us for the holidays. If you feel them, sometimes you may get a feel of them. Sometimes you may see somebody and all of a sudden they look just like the person you're thinking of, and it may startle you and it may be very brief. That's an overlay. You may get the smell of them. You may be cooking something and get like, you feel like you're hearing their words almost, you know. I like to make it with the heavy cream, you know, and so it comes through in all of these different ways. And just take a moment in your mind and acknowledge them. Oh, how nice that you're here. Oh, you know, you can say, no, I'm not making it with heavy cream. I'm going to make it lighter. You know, you don't have to always be in irreverence with your loved ones. You can tease them the same way you did when they were here, you know. And the thing is like I said, maybe all of your family members aren't on board with this, but you can still have that relationship. And by you acknowledging that relationship, it keeps them engaged around us too. Remember, they love you as much as you love them. They still want to be a part of things. Just like when they were here, they still might be a little bit joking and teasing, just like when they were here. Some of them do swear, frankly, from the other side. I just choose not to do so in readings, but they will still do that, you know. And so that part doesn't change. And that, to me, all of this here is really the beauty of mediumship, you know, and the connections and knowing that without a doubt, our loved ones are still with us. You may hear footsteps in the house. In a reading this afternoon, I said to the woman, I bet you're hearing your cabinets rattle a little bit because your mom is wanting to rearrange the plates. And she said, that's really funny because I felt the need to rearrange the plates in the cabinet. And so she was hearing a little bit of noises around, you know. Put music on that they like to hear. You know, if they really loved to listen to music, play some songs for them. It's more than once I've heard, could you please leave the TV on with my soap operas on because I don't have them here. Now, I think that's a very funny thing, but does it hurt us any to leave a little bit from time to time? Of course not. So this is how, these are the experiences I've had, learned so much from all of the people I've connected with on the other side. I try to honor my loved ones in the same way, and from time to time we put a little music on, or when we're cooking a dish, it's not unusual for somebody to correct us on how they would like it. Doesn't mean we always follow it, but they give us their input anyway. So, use that connection, keep doing it that way. Keep that engagement happen. It not only helps them, but it helps you. And as you have that comfort and peace with that connection, knowing it's there, that actually translates around and helps everybody within the family, because the grief doesn't stay in a heavy way. And it's just knowing, when you get a sign or when something comes up and you're not sure what that is about, because there's so many times we just feel like we're making it up, has to be in my imagination. I so badly want to hear from them, So when something happens that definitely seems out of the ordinary or out of the blue, they've been known to know that they're on social media, and so they've also had, there was a client the other day that her son changed the email right when she was typing. So, when these things happen, if you're not sure exactly who it is, just ask in your mind, I know I'm getting a sign, who's here, please? And then whoever pops into mind first is who it is. So, try to keep engaged. Let's try not to be afraid of it. Let's try to, make sure that, remember, there's still people, and they are smart people, This is from Kathleen. Thanks, Amy, for giving us your time. Do you think there's a certain age beyond which our loved ones no longer visit us for the holidays or at other times? I've never heard from a special great-grandparent, but she's been on the other side for over 20 years. Just wondering if you've had any sense of whether souls stop checking in after a while. That is a great question. So a lot of things can happen, Kathleen. Just like here, each person is different, and that doesn't change. A couple things to keep in mind. So do I think there's a place when they don't really visit us? Not so much. Over time, it may get less, or it may feel less. There are different areas on the other side, and usually within the first few years, people stay very tied to the mental level, which is where we experience the strength and depth in conversation. It feels like they're right here. And at times they may choose to go to a different area where it's a little bit lighter. And so we may not feel their presence as much because the energy is even lighter in that state. And oftentimes as a medium, we will find that when they have shifted to that area, that they don't really talk about so much about their passing. They don't give us visceral feelings about, you may not see them physically. They may not describe that stuff. They're more about stronger, deeper messages when they shift in that. And so even as a medium, it can be a little bit harder to feel, when they shift to that state, and you may be picking up that same thing and thinking they're just not around. So that may be part of it. Some people never connect with us. And, we don't always know why that is. My mentor said, so frankly, some people are just selfish. Other times people, they don't believe in mediumship, and that may not change on the other side for them. I've actually had a couple of them on the other side say, I never believed in this, but my daughter's here or my son is here and I want to speak to them. So they even break their own boundaries in order to make the connection. Time doesn't always mean that we will not connect with them. And the reason is I've been able to connect people to great grandparents in the past. I've connected people with so far back. It's been interesting. And part of the reason they were coming through from great grandparents was to talk about family tree. So everyone is different. Every way of connecting is different. And, and maybe in your case, maybe your great grandmother did move on to a different area and is perhaps working on wanting to come back. We can't know the full answer exactly, but usually there's still a thread to us in some way. How can we better hear them? Well, that's a tough one, Dawn. So usually what I do is, hearing them, first off, the way we hear them is not outside of our head, it's in our mind. And how you'll know it's you versus them is it just drops in. You know, you're not really thinking about something, or if you're thinking about them and you're asking a question and you get the answer before you finish asking the question, you're hearing it, is coming through your clairaudience. But if somebody is not chatty on the other, if they were not chatty when they're here, they won't be chatty there. And so they may give you signs through other ways, you know. So we have to also look at their style of communication versus our style of communication, if that makes sense. If you're wanting to further develop your hearing with them, because it's all about getting more and more fine-tuned with all of your senses, you can do some listening exercises. And one of the things you can do is just sit quietly for 5 minutes in your living room, outside, anywhere, and fine-tune your hearing. So first you might hear, let's say if you're outside, you might hear a car going by. Well, what do you hear beyond the car going by? You know, maybe you hear 2 blocks over children playing. Well, what do you hear from that? Maybe you hear rustling in the leaves. You know, I tell my students, I want you to go listening till you can hear as far as an ant crawling across the leaf. Now, do we really hear the ant crossing a leaf? Maybe not. But the idea is to fine tune and practice with that hearing. So doing some listening exercises can help amp up your clairaudience. All right, so thank you. Okay, Molly H. If my mom or dad are shy or do not like to discuss deep feelings with people outside of the family, will they connect? Well, that's also a great question. See, this is why I love you guys, because you always ask such great questions. So it depends, Molly. What I will find, if people are shy or they'll say my private life is my private life, usually they'll come through in a private reading, but not necessarily in a group. You know, and so if they don't like to discuss deep feelings, they still may not like to discuss deep feelings. You know, they don't necessarily change. They don't always apologize. They may explain why they were the way they were, but they may not go. And so it's important that we still respect the fact that we may have questions for them and they may not answer them, you know, and that's a tough place to be, but it does happen. Does a loved one get tired of sending signs when the person they are sending them to thinks it's all in their head? Do they think, what else can I do to prove I'm here? How easy is it for them to send a sign? Okay, so do they get tired of sending signs? I would say on occasion they get a little frustrated. You know, will they stop? No. Will they think about how else can I prove I'm here? Absolutely. Some of them have actually showed me, like, I'm yelling at them with a bullhorn and they're not hearing me. So, you know, how hard is it? It takes some effort for them to give signs, and it's really astounding on what they can do, frankly, but it does take some effort, because remember, when you're on the other side, it's a lot lighter. Here, it's very dense. And for them to give you a sign, they have to go into that denseness, a place they've transitioned from. It's very heavy for them, and then poof, make it happen. So it does take some effort, and that's why I always believe in thanking them for giving their sign. You know, they will keep trying to connect with you, and if you're thinking it's all in your head, I would also question that based on what I said earlier, you know. So, but very good question, thank you. My grandpa just passed in October and I haven't felt a connection yet. Is there a time frame from passing on of when they come through? So first off, I'm sorry for the loss of your grandfather, Sabrina. You know, as far as the time of them when they connect, well, somebody I connected with passed a week ago. Like literally their service is this Sunday. So, and she came through very well in the reading. Other times it takes a little bit longer. It depends on the individual, but it also can depend on where you are in your own grief. You know, our grief can inadvertently block that connection. And so we don't want to. A lot of times that's when we want to feel it the most, but we can inadvertently block it. Now, also it depends sometimes on the passing, you know, also, you know, if they went through a lot of medications and things, you know, then they have to kind of clear through some of that sometimes. Also, one other thing that we need to take into account is they have to learn how to communicate from the other side too. And some of us are just better at it than others, period. So I'm sure if you, let's see, it was just October, we're just in December, my sense is probably about February, March, you'll probably start hearing a little bit from your grandfather. But I would try to reach out and feeling with him. That's my sense here, is to reach out and feeling, versus, you know, huge signs, because I just have a sense about him that he was a little bit not in your face, if you will. And so connection with him is going to be a little more subtle for you. This is Cindy. Can they photobomb our family group pictures? Oh, of course they can. And isn't that great? Like, save those pictures. How brilliant is that? Sometimes it may look like a light. Sometimes you just might see like a little overlay of a face. A funny thing can happen is a lot of people can take the same picture and only a couple cameras will get it. So, you know, yes, they can absolutely do that. Kendra, can you request for them to show you they are there in a specific way, or do you just have to listen to how they choose to show themselves? I'm sorry, my screen moved. And are they limited to how they can show themselves? Well, Lakendra, that's a loaded question. So you can ask them to, yes, you can ask, the way to ask them to communicate with you is to do it this way. I'm so wanting to communicate with you, and I know that you're around. I don't always sense or get the signs. So is there a way that you can communicate with me in a way that I would understand it? Because remember, they're going to communicate from their point of view. So if they are not visual people, you may not get an image. If they are not lovey, touchy, feely, you may not feel their presence. If they had a softer energy when they were here, you may not feel their presence. If they were very analytical, they're going to give you tidbits, which are probably, for me at least, the most challenging, are the truly analytical people. So the way to bridge that connection is to ask them to give it to you in a way that you will understand it. And so you know without a doubt it's them. Are they limited to how they can show themselves? I would say no. They're not necessarily limited. It does take a lot of energy for them to manifest a full apparition, and usually it comes in and dissipates. A lot of times they won't necessarily do that strongly because it scares us. You know, you get startled. So, you know, but I don't say they're limited, but I really will say again that they will communicate within their scope of how they were as an individual when they were here. You know, if it's somebody who's not nosy and in your business, they're not going to be like that way all of a sudden from the other side. They just don't change that dramatically. So that's just something to keep in mind. Patty, have you ever heard of signs in the form of water? Water suddenly drips from my shower odd times, even in the middle of the night. Well, no, I have not, Patty. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be happening. Towels fall down in my bathroom, and I know it's my grandmother, and why she feels the need to knock off towels, I just don't understand, but it only happened since she passed. So could it be water? Yes. I've not heard of that, but I also haven't heard of every single way of connecting. If that catches you in a time when that water is dripping, if it catches you in a time that maybe you were wandering or thinking about them, maybe look into that and see if it matches up in that way, and that way you'll know for sure it's a sign. Have you found that people who are more spiritual in this life connect more clearly? Oh, not necessarily, Molly. Actually, we kind of discover that even mediums take longer to communicate from the other side. So partly it's because you're so used to connecting from the physical to the other side, whether it's, you know, shamanistic or healing or Reiki or mediumship, however avenue, once you get to the other side, you have to completely reverse that. And so, no, not necessarily. And it can take time. And sometimes you wonder, like, you know, how come you just can't be more clear, frankly, you know? So just, if you think about being dropped into Germany and you don't speak German, and all of a sudden we have to send you to go to work now, what are you going to do? It's going to be a little tricky, isn't it? And so we just have to allow them to do that. But usually you get some signs in that state. Usually you do. It just may not be as clear, but over time you can develop more of a relationship for sure. Okay, Maria, what can I do to have my parents and loved ones to communicate with me? So this is for everyone because we all want our parents and loved ones to communicate with us for sure, right? And so it's along the lines of what I've said earlier on is we keep inviting them, we keep asking them. If you see a sign, if you get a sign, you can just say, thank you so much. And who was that from? So you can learn to identify where the signs come from. You know, who's the one that gives dimes? Who's the one that's opening or closing doors? Who's the one I just feel like sitting next to me on the couch, you know, or I just feel somebody in the room, you know, who is that? And so the more you ask questions, you see, you know, the more you build a relationship. We are often in what I call the receiving state. And so we just take in what comes, but if we do our part and try to build the bridge with them, we actually develop and build more. We have Katie. I know the holidays are so hard. Does a past loved one feel the same emotion of grief and at the same level of grief we currently feel? Or do they just see us in our grief? Do they understand the level of sadness we may feel? So, Katie, on the other side, they don't go through the same, they don't feel the same grief we do. It's not like they lose feeling. I want to be clear on that. They can be quite emotional from the other side, but usually in a more positive, loving way. Remember that for them, they're home and it's much more comfortable for them. It's much easier. You know, they don't have the heaviness of the physical world. They don't have the stresses that we have, you know, and because they can still connect with us from there to here, they see what's going on and they may feel, you know, sad. A common statement that is made from the other side is, I don't want you to feel sad for me. I am okay. For us, going through grief, it's a huge adjustment because we don't feel the heaviness and of their energy anymore. That solid presence, that tangible, I touch you, I pick up the phone, you know, we don't feel those anymore. And so we feel the grief much more strongly than they do. Do they see our grief? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, they're huge on offering comfort to us. It was this week in another reading, apparently I've done a lot of readings this week, where a woman's mother on the other side, I said to her, your mother is trying to get you back to sleep. I said, you're waking up an awful lot throughout the night because of the way her mother showed it. But the mother showed me the image of her daughter literally sitting straight up in bed. And she said, yes. And she's going through a hard time with lots of things. And her mother is actually trying to lay her back down. You know, so her mother's with her and her mother's trying to give her some energy from the mother to her daughter to help her sleep. And so, you know, it's important for us to respect our grief. It's also important to know that sometimes we're frankly angry that they've passed, you know, and so it's important that we know it's okay to be angry with them. They can take it. They're in a great place of support. They really have the support that they need. And they do understand our grief because remember, they lived before. So they themselves also went through grief. So they understand what it is. They understand about it, you know, but they're not held down by the burden of grief, if you will. Okay, so I hope that helps to answer your question. And the holidays are hard. So this is why we wanted to do something a little extra this time.